You broke me while I was fixing our home.
The plumber's face went white as he pulled the camera out of our shower drain. That's not something you see every day. A guy who spends his life elbow deep in other people's filth looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Sir, you need to see this," Mike Kowalski said, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd been our go-to plumber for 3 years, a straight-talking Polish guy who'd seen everything twice. But whatever was on that tiny screen had him rattled. I leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the grainy black and white image. There, wedged deep in the pipe, where no normal piece of debris should be, was something that made my blood run cold. A small metal object, rectangular, with letters etched into its surface. "Can you make out what that says?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Mike adjusted the camera angle and the letters came into focus. C.R. Chad Rourke. My wife's personal trainer's initials, engraved on what looked suspiciously like a gym locker key, stuck in our master bathroom shower drain. The shower only Lena used. The shower she'd been using a lot more frequently lately, especially after her extended workout sessions that seemed to run later and later into the evening. "How long has this been backing up?" Mike asked, still staring at his screen. "About 2 weeks," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "My wife mentioned it was draining slow." Mike nodded grimly and started packing up his equipment. "Mr. Palmer, I've been doing this for 22 years. I've pulled wedding rings, toys, jewelry, all kinds of things out of drains, but this," he gestured at the screen, "this looks deliberate, like someone was trying to hide something and it got stuck." I stood there in our master bathroom, surrounded by Lena's expensive skincare products and organic shampoos, feeling the foundation of my 12-year marriage crack like old concrete. The key wasn't just evidence of where she'd been, it was proof of how careless she'd gotten. How confident she was that I'd never find out. "Can you get it out?" I asked. "I can try, but I'll need to cut into the pipe. It's wedged in there pretty good." Mike paused, looking uncomfortable. "Sir, I don't know what's going on here, but maybe you should think about whether you want this key back or not. Sometimes it's better not to know." But I already knew. I'd known for months, really. The late nights, the new workout clothes, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home from the gym, the way she'd stopped looking me in the eye when she said she loved me. "Get it out," I said. An hour later, Mike handed me a small, tarnished brass key with "Property of Fitzone Gym" stamped on one side and "CR" engraved on the other. Chad Rourke's locker key, which had somehow ended up in my wife's possession, then down our shower drain. After Mike left, I sat on our bed, turning the key over in my hands. Lena wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. She was at her Tuesday evening yoga class, which I now realized was probably code for something else entirely. I walked to our closet and pulled out my old duffel bag from the top shelf. As I started throwing clothes into it, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was doing. I left the key on Lena's pillow with a note: "Ask Chad for his spare." My brother Marty's couch smelled like beer and regret, which seemed appropriate given my current situation. He'd taken the news about Lena and Chad with the kind of grim satisfaction that only a divorced man can muster. "I told you that guy was bad news the first time you mentioned him," Marty said, cracking open his third beer of the evening. "Personal trainer, my A. The guy's a walking midlife crisis with protein powder. You tell everyone their wife's trainer is bad news," I pointed out. But I appreciated the solidarity. Marty worked construction and had the kind of straightforward world view that cut through BS like a circular saw through plywood. "Yeah, but I'm usually right." He took a long pull from his beer. "So what's your plan? Lawyer up and take half of everything?" I'd been thinking about that all day. The smart play was to hire a lawyer, file for divorce, and try to salvage whatever I could from the wreckage of our marriage. But something about finding that key had awakened a different impulse in me. Something darker and more satisfying than just splitting assets. "I want to understand what I'm dealing with first," I said. "How long it's been going on, how serious it is, who else knows about it." Marty raised an eyebrow. "You want to go full detective mode?" "Something like that." The next morning, I drove to Fitzone Gym. I'd been there exactly once before, when Lena first signed up and wanted to show me around. It was one of those upscale fitness clubs with juice bars and eucalyptus towels, the kind of place where a membership costs more than most people's car payments. Chad was easy to spot. He was in the weight room, wearing a tank top that showed off his artificially enhanced physique, talking to a blonde woman in expensive workout gear. Even from across the room, I could see the practiced charm, the way he leaned in just a little too close, the $1 million smile that probably worked on every bored housewife in town. I watched him for 20 minutes, noting his routine, his clients, the way other trainers deferred to him. Chad Rourke was the alpha male of this particular ecosystem, and he knew it. The kind of guy who'd never had to work for anything in his life because his looks and charm opened every door. That's when I noticed something interesting. Chad kept checking his phone, and each time he did, his expression grew more frustrated. He was looking for something or someone. After his last client left, he disappeared into the locker room for almost 15 minutes. When he came out, he looked genuinely agitated. He went straight to the front desk and had what appeared to be an intense conversation with the receptionist, a young woman who kept shaking her head and shrugging apologetically. I didn't need to be a genius to figure out what was happening. Chad was looking for his spare locker key, the one currently sitting in my truck's glove compartment, the one that had taken an unexpected detour through my wife's possession and down our shower drain. I left the gym with a plan forming in my mind. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal went. That evening, I sat in my truck outside Lena's supposed yoga class location. The building was dark. There was no Tuesday evening yoga class, and probably never had been. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "Class running late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." The casual cruelty of that "love you" hit me like a physical blow. How long had she been lying to my face? How many times had she looked me in the eye and said those words while planning to spend the evening with another man? I drove to Chad's apartment complex, a trendy high-rise downtown that screamed bachelor pad. Lena's car was in the visitor parking garage. I sat there for 2 hours, watching the lights in what I assumed was Chad's apartment, feeling something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete betrayal of everything we'd built together, conducted with a level of deception that suggested it had been going on for months, maybe longer. When Lena finally came home at midnight, I was waiting in Marty's living room, planning my next move. She probably assumed I was asleep in our bed, never imagining that I was 3 miles away, holding the key to her secret life. The next morning, she called me at work, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Nick, we need to talk. Something's happened." "What kind of something?" "Just come home. Please, we need to talk about us." I almost laughed. After months of lies and deception, she wanted to talk about us. But I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I had more work to do first. "I can't leave work right now," I said. "We'll talk tonight." "Nick, please, this is important. So is my job." "We'll talk tonight, Lena." I hung up and went back to reviewing building permits, but my mind was elsewhere. Lena had found my note and the key. She knew that I knew. The question now was what she'd do about it, and more importantly, what I was going to do about it. Lena's sister Rebecca showed up at my office unannounced on Thursday afternoon, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously my wife was taking the situation. Rebecca was Lena's older sister and self-appointed family spokesperson, the kind of woman who'd never worked a day in her life, but had opinions about everyone else's choices. "Nick, we need to discuss what's happening with you and Lena," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk, like she owned the place. Rebecca had the same blonde hair and blue eyes as her sister, but where Lena had always been athletic and energetic, Rebecca was soft and entitled, the product of a lifetime of having other people solve her problems. "I wasn't aware anything was happening with me and Lena," I said, not looking up from the construction plans I was reviewing. "Is there something you'd like to tell me?" "Don't play games, Nick. Lena told me about your little stunt with the key. She's devastated." I set down my pen and looked at Rebecca directly. "She's devastated? That's interesting. What exactly is she devastated about? About you not trusting her? About you going through her things and making accusations?" "I didn't go through her things, Rebecca. A plumber found Chad Rourke's locker key in our shower drain. I'm curious how it got there." Rebecca's perfectly made-up face flushed slightly. "There could be any number of explanations for that." "I'm sure there could be. I'd love to hear one." "Lena doesn't owe you an explanation for every little thing in her life. Marriage is about trust, Nick. You should know that." I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister-in-law's face. Rebecca had always disliked me, mainly because I'd never been impressed by her family's money or social status. To her, I was just a working-class guy who'd somehow managed to marry above his station. But now I was seeing something else in her expression. Knowledge. Rebecca knew about the affair, and she was here to run interference for her sister. "You're right," I said. "Marriage is about trust. It's also about honesty, loyalty, and not sleeping with your personal trainer while your husband thinks you're at yoga class." Rebecca's face went pale. "How dare you accuse my sister of—" "I'm not accusing her of anything. I'm stating facts. Chad Rourke's locker key was in our shower drain. Lena's been lying about her Tuesday evening activities. Her car was parked at Chad's apartment building last night until midnight. These aren't accusations, Rebecca. They're observations." "Even if that were true," Rebecca said, her voice shaking slightly, "maybe you should ask yourself why Lena might be looking elsewhere for companionship. When was the last time you took her somewhere nice? When was the last time you made an effort to—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop right there. You're not going to sit in my office and blame me for your sister's affair. If Lena was unhappy, she could have talked to me about it. She could have suggested counseling. She could have asked for a divorce. What she couldn't do was lie to my face for months while she screwed around with her trainer." Rebecca stood up abruptly. "I think you're making a terrible mistake, Nick. Lena loves you. She's made some poor choices, but she loves you. If you throw away your marriage over this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The only thing I regret is not figuring this out sooner." After Rebecca left, I sat in my office thinking about what she'd revealed. Lena had told her sister about finding the key, which meant she'd probably told their parents, too. The whole family knew about the affair, and they were circling the wagons to protect Lena and minimize the fallout. That evening, I met Marty at O'Malley's, a dive bar near the construction site where he was working. The place was exactly what you'd expect: dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of clientele that minded their own business. Perfect for the conversation I needed to have. "So what's the plan?" Marty asked after I'd filled him in on Rebecca's visit. "I want to know how long this has been going on and who else knows about it. I want to understand exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any permanent decisions." "You thinking about taking her back?" I considered the question. A week ago, I might have said yes. Despite everything, Lena and I had 12 years of history together. We'd built a life, made plans, weathered other storms. But finding that key had changed something fundamental in me. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the casual cruelty of it, the way she'd been lying to my face every single day. "No," I said. "I'm thinking about making sure she understands the consequences of her choices." Marty grinned. "Now you're talking my language. What do you need?" "Information. I want to know everything about Chad Rourke. Where he lives, where he works, who he associates with, what his weaknesses are. I want to know how long this affair has been going on and whether Lena's been telling people about it." "That's going to take some time. I've got time." Over the next week, Marty and I conducted what we jokingly called Operation Shower Drain. Marty had contacts throughout the city: construction workers, bartenders, mechanics, the kind of people who saw everything and remembered details. Within 3 days, we had a comprehensive picture of Chad Rourke's life. Chad was 28 years old, originally from California, and had been working at FitZone for about 8 months. He lived in an expensive downtown apartment that he definitely couldn't afford on a trainer's salary, which suggested he had other sources of income. He drove a leased BMW, wore expensive clothes, and had a reputation around town as a player who specialized in married women. More importantly, we learned that Chad had been bragging about his conquest. Several people had heard him talking about nailing the building inspector's wife at various bars around town. He'd apparently been showing off photos. Not explicit ones, but pictures of Lena in workout clothes, pictures of expensive gifts she'd bought him, screenshots of her text messages. The final piece of intelligence came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Henderson, my elderly neighbor who'd been watching the whole drama unfold from her kitchen window. She'd seen Lena and Chad together multiple times, including once in our driveway when I was at work. "I thought about telling you," Mrs. Henderson said, "but I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. Though I suppose you figured it out on your own." "How long?" I asked. "I first saw him at your house back in March. It's October now, so 7 months, maybe 8? 8 months. Lena had been conducting this affair for almost the entire time Chad had been working at her gym. This wasn't a recent mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained deception that had been going on for the better part of a year. That night, I sat in Marty's living room, staring at the dossier we'd compiled on Chad Rourke and my wife's betrayal. I had all the information I needed. Now it was time to decide what to do with it. I finally went home on Friday evening. Lena was waiting for me in the kitchen, dressed in the blue sundress I'd always loved, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She'd prepared my favorite dinner, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and had candles lit on the dining room table. The whole scene was designed to remind me of better times, to make me forget about keys and lies and 8 months of deception. "Hi," she said softly when I walked through the door. "I'm glad you're home, are you?" "Of course I am. Nick, we need to talk about what happened, about the key, about everything. I know you have questions." I set my keys on the counter and looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 13 years ago. But now I could see things I'd missed before. The calculated way she was standing, the practiced vulnerability in her expression, the way she was playing a role rather than being genuine. "I do have questions," I said. "Let's start with an easy one. How long have you been sleeping with Chad Rourke?" Lena's face crumpled, and tears started flowing down her cheeks. "Nick, please. It's not what you think." "It's not what I think?" "Lena, I found his locker key in our shower drain. Your car was parked at his apartment Tuesday night until midnight. You've been lying to me about yoga classes that don't exist. What part of this isn't what I think? It just happened. I never meant for it to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." "For 8 months?" Her face went white. "How do you know it's been 8 months?" "Because I've been doing my homework. Mrs. Henderson has seen Chad here multiple times since March. People around town have heard him bragging about sleeping with the building inspector's wife. He's been showing off pictures of you, Lena. Pictures and text messages." Lena sank into one of the kitchen chairs, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking. "Oh God. Oh God. Nick, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. For 8 months, it happened. Every morning when you kissed me goodbye. Every night when you told me you loved me. Every time we made love. You were lying to my face. I do love you. I've always loved you. Chad doesn't mean anything to me. He made me feel young again, desirable. Like I was still attractive, and I didn't. It's not about you, Nick. It's about me. About feeling like I was disappearing, like I was just becoming this boring suburban housewife. Chad made me feel alive again." I stared at my wife, this woman I'd shared my life with for over a decade, and felt something die inside me. Not love, that had been dying slowly for months. What died was hope. Hope that this could be explained, that it could be forgiven, that we could somehow find our way back to each other. "So you felt boring and decided to have an 8-month affair with a guy who brags about you in bars? That made you feel alive?" "It wasn't supposed to go on this long. It was supposed to just be a few times, just something to make me feel better about myself, but then it became complicated." "Complicated how?" Lena was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks. "He said he loved me. He said he wanted me to leave you and be with him. He made all these promises about the life we could have together, and you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that someone could love me that much, could want me that much." I felt a cold laugh escape my throat. "Lena, the guy is 28 years old with no money and no prospects. You're a 40-year-old married woman with a house and a stable life. He doesn't love you. He's using you." "That's not true. You don't know him like I do. I know he's been bragging about sleeping with you to anyone who'll listen. I know he's been showing off your text messages like trophies. I know he's been taking pictures of you and sharing them with his friends. Is that love, Lena?" She looked up at me with genuine shock. "That's not true. Chad wouldn't do that." "Ask him. Next time you see him, ask him about the conversations he's been having at Murphy's Tavern and the Blue Moon. Ask him about the photos on his phone." Lena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it automatically, then tried to hide it from me. "Let me guess," I said. "Chad? Nick, please, can't we just focus on us? On fixing this? There is no us to fix, Lena. You destroyed us 8 months ago when you decided that feeling alive was more important than your marriage vows. So that's it? 13 years together and you're just going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away. I'm just acknowledging reality." I walked upstairs to our bedroom and started packing more clothes. Lena followed me, still crying, still trying to salvage something from the wreckage. "Where are you going to go?" she asked. "That's not your concern anymore. Nick, please, don't do this. We can work through this." We can go to counseling. I'll stop seeing Chad. I'll do whatever you want. I turned to face her. You'll stop seeing Chad? How generous of you. Tell me, Lena, if I hadn't found that key, how much longer would this have gone on? She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. Here's what's going to happen, I said, zipping up my suitcase. I'm going to file for divorce. You're going to move out of this house because it's in my name and I'm not leaving again. You can go live with Chad in his fancy apartment or with Rebecca or wherever you want. I don't care anymore. You can't just kick me out. This is my home too. Actually, I can. Check the deed, Lena. Check the mortgage documents. This house is mine. You never wanted your name on the paperwork because you said it would complicate things if your parents ever decided to give you money. Remember that conversation? She did remember. I could see it in her face. It had been one of many financial decisions she'd been happy to let me handle, back when she trusted me to take care of everything. I'll fight you, she said. I'll get a lawyer. Good, do that, but in the meantime, you have until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. After that, I'm changing the locks. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. Lena grabbed my arm. Nick, wait, please, I know I screwed up, but don't you think 13 years deserves better than this? Don't you think we owe it to ourselves to try? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Lena, for 8 months, you've been lying to me every single day. You've been having love with another man and then coming home and having love with me. You've been telling him things about our marriage, our private life, our problems. You've been making plans for a future with him while pretending to make plans with me. And the only reason you want to try now is because you got caught. That's not true. It is true. If that key hadn't ended up in our drain, you'd still be lying to me right now. You'd still be sneaking around, still be planning your Tuesday night visits to Chad's apartment, still be telling me you loved me while you were in love with someone else. I pulled my arm free from her grasp. You don't get to destroy our marriage and then demand that I help you rebuild it. You don't get to betray me for 8 months and then ask for forgiveness because you got caught. And you definitely don't get to stay in my house while you figure out which man you want to be with. I want to be with you. I choose you. You chose him. For 8 months, every day, you chose him. The only reason you're choosing me now is because you finally got caught and you're scared of the consequences. I walked toward the stairs, then turned back one more time. By the way, Lena, you might want to call Chad and ask him about those photos he's been showing around town. Ask him about the things he's been saying about you at Murphy's Tavern. Ask him if he's been telling people about your birthmark, the one on your hip that you're so self-conscious about. Ask him if he really loves you, or if you're just another conquest he likes to brag about. I left her standing in our bedroom, finally understanding that her secret affair hadn't been nearly as secret as she'd thought. By Monday morning, the whole town knew about Lena and Chad. Small towns are like that. Secrets have a half-life of about 48 hours before they become common knowledge. I'd underestimated how much people had already known and how quickly the remaining details would spread once the dam broke. I was reviewing inspection reports at my office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Chad's number. We need to talk, he said without preamble. Do we? Look, man, I know you're pissed, but this whole thing has gotten out of hand. People are talking, and it's affecting both of us. It's affecting both of us? That's interesting. How exactly is it affecting you, Chad? I've got a business to run. I can't have people thinking I'm some kind of homewrecker. I almost laughed. Chad, you are a homewrecker. You've been sleeping with my wife for 8 months. That's literally the definition of a homewrecker. It's not that simple, and you know it. Lena came on to me. She was unhappy in her marriage, looking for something you weren't giving her. I didn't pursue her. She pursued me. And you were powerless to resist. I'm just saying it takes 2 people to have an affair. Maybe instead of blaming me, you should be asking yourself why your wife was looking elsewhere. The audacity was breathtaking. Chad Rourke, who'd been bragging about his conquest to anyone who'd listen, was now trying to position himself as the victim of an aggressive older woman. Here's what I'm asking myself, Chad. I'm asking myself why a 28-year-old personal trainer with no money and no prospects would be interested in a 40-year-old married woman. And you know what answer I keep coming up with? What? You were using her. You saw a lonely housewife with money and a stable life, and you saw an opportunity. The only question is whether you were planning to string her along indefinitely or if you actually thought you could get her to divorce me and support you. That's not how it was, isn't it? Tell me, Chad, how many other married clients have you been sleeping with? The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop taking her calls, stop answering her texts, and stop seeing her. If I find out you've had any contact with her, I'm going to make your life very complicated. You threatening me? I'm promising you. I know where you work, where you live, where you drink, and who your friends are. I know about your lease violations, your unpaid parking tickets, and the fact that you're working as a personal trainer without proper certification. I know about your white powder habit and the fact that you've been dealing to other gym members. Should I continue? Another long silence. How do you know all that? I'm a building inspector, Chad. I'm very good at finding out things that people want to keep hidden. The question is, do you want me to keep that information to myself, or do you want me to start sharing it with the appropriate authorities? What do you want? I want you to disappear from my life and my wife's life. I want you to find a new job, preferably in a different city. And I want you to stop talking about your personal escapades, because if I hear my wife's name come out of your mouth again, I'm going to forget about being civilized. And if I do all that, then your secrets stay secret, and you get to start over somewhere else without any complications. Fine, but you need to tell Lena to stop calling me. She's been blowing up my phone since Friday night, wanting to meet up and talk about our relationship. I never promised her anything permanent. I'll pass along the message. I hung up and sat back in my chair, feeling a grim satisfaction. Chad Rourke was exactly what I'd suspected, an opportunistic predator who'd seen my wife as an easy mark. Now that the situation had become complicated and potentially dangerous for him, he was ready to cut his losses and run. That evening, I drove to the house to collect more of my belongings. Lena's car was gone, but Rebecca's Mercedes was in the driveway. I found them in the kitchen, surrounded by empty wine bottles and crumpled tissues. Both women looked like they'd been crying for hours. "Nick," Rebecca said when I walked in, "thank God you're here. Lena needs to talk to you." "I'm just here to get some things," I said. "We've already talked." Lena looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Chad won't return my calls. He won't see me. His gym said he's taking a leave of absence. What did you do?" I had a conversation with him about the situation. What kind of conversation? The kind where he admitted that he never cared about you and was just using you for love and money. The kind where he asked me to tell you to stop calling him because he never promised you anything permanent. Lena's face crumpled. "That's not true. He loves me. He said he wanted us to be together." "He lied, Lena, just like you lied to me. The only difference is that you believed his lies and I stopped believing yours." Rebecca stood up unsteadily. "This is all your fault, Nick. If you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened." "Really, Rebecca? It's my fault that your sister had an 8-month affair? It's your fault that she was unhappy enough to look elsewhere. When was the last time you took her on a real vacation? When was the last time you bought her flowers or jewelry or did something romantic? When was the last time she asked me to? When was the last time she told me she was unhappy instead of lying about yoga classes? She shouldn't have to ask. You should have known." I looked at Rebecca, this entitled woman who'd never had to work for anything in her life, who'd never faced real consequences for her actions, and I felt my patience finally snap. "You know what, Rebecca? You're right. I should have known. I should have known when Lena started showering immediately after coming home from the gym. I should have known when she started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. I should have known when she stopped wanting to have love with me, or when she did want to have love. She seemed like she was thinking about someone else." "Nick, please," Lena whispered. "I should have known when she started buying new lingerie that I never saw her wear. I should have known when she started working out twice as much, but never wanted to talk about her progress. I should have known when she started coming home energized and happy in a way that had nothing to do with me." "Stop," Lena said, but I was just getting started. "I should have known when our credit card bills started showing charges at expensive restaurants that we never went to together. I should have known when she started talking about Chad constantly, how funny he was, how smart he was, how different he was from other guys. I should have known when she stopped wearing her wedding ring to the gym." Both women were staring at me now. But you know what I really should have known? I should have known that a woman who could lie to my face for 8 months, who could sleep with another man and then come home and sleep with me, who could make plans for a future with her lover while pretending to make plans with her husband. I should have known that woman wasn't worth fighting for. I headed toward the stairs to collect my remaining belongings. "Where are you going?" Lena called after me. "I'm going to start my new life. The one where I don't have to wonder if my wife is telling me the truth. The one where I don't have to worry about finding other men's belongings in my house. The one where I can trust the person I'm sleeping with." "Nick, wait, please. I know I made mistakes, But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned back to her. Lena, you spent 8 months building a relationship with another man. You shared intimate details of our marriage with him. You made plans for a future with him. You told him you loved him. You bought him gifts with money from our joint account. You brought him into our home when I wasn't here. You had love with him, and then came home and had love with me without even showering first. She flinched at each accusation, but I wasn't finished. You lied to me about where you were going, what you were doing, and who you were with. You deleted text messages and cleared your browser history. You created elaborate cover stories about yoga classes and girls' nights out. You involved your sister and probably your parents in covering for you. You put my health at risk by sleeping with multiple partners without telling me. I never slept with anyone else, she protested. You slept with me and Chad. That's multiple partners, Lena. And for all I know, Chad was sleeping with other people too. Did you ever ask him? Did you ever make him get tested? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. You destroyed our marriage, Lena, not me, you. And now that your boyfriend has dumped you and you're facing the consequences of your choices, you want me to help you fix what you broke. But some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals are too deep, too complete, too cruel. So you're just giving up, just like that? I'm not giving up. I'm accepting reality. The woman I married wouldn't have done what you did. The woman I married would have talked to me if she was unhappy. The woman I married would have asked for counseling or asked for a divorce before she started sleeping with someone else. The woman I married would have respected me enough to be honest with me. I started up the stairs, then paused. The woman I married died 8 months ago when you decided that your personal trainer was more important than your marriage vows. I've just been too stupid to realize it until now. An hour later, I loaded the last of my belongings into my truck and drove away from the house I'd called home for 7 years. In the rearview mirror, I could see Lena standing in the doorway, watching me leave. I felt many things in that moment. Anger, sadness, relief, uncertainty about the future. But the one thing I didn't feel was regret. For the first time in months, I was moving towards something instead of running from it. 3 months later, I was settling into my new apartment across town when I got a call from my lawyer, Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer was a sharp, no-nonsense divorce attorney who'd been recommended by Marty's ex-wife, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. I've got good news and interesting news, Jennifer said. Which do you want first? Give me the good news. The divorce is final. Judge Morrison signed the papers this morning. You're officially a free man. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. And the interesting news? Lena's attorney wants to discuss a settlement modification. Apparently, she's having some financial difficulties and wants to revisit the alimony arrangement. I almost laughed. What kind of financial difficulties? Well, it seems that Chad Rourke left town rather suddenly about 2 months ago, cleaned out their joint bank account and disappeared. Lena's been trying to track him down, but he's apparently very good at not being found. They had a joint bank account? Oh, it gets better. Lena had been supporting him for months, paying his rent, his car payments, buying him expensive gifts. She'd run up about $30,000 in credit card debt that you didn't know about. Debt that became her responsibility in the divorce settlement. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Even after everything, Lena could still surprise me with the depth of her poor judgment. So let me get this straight. She destroyed our marriage for a guy who was using her for money, and when the relationship became inconvenient for him, he took her money and disappeared? That appears to be the situation. Her attorney is arguing that she was the victim of a con man and shouldn't be held responsible for debts incurred under emotional duress. What did you tell them? I told them that emotional duress doesn't excuse 8 months of adultery and financial deception. I also pointed out that you were the real victim here, not Lena. Good. What else? There's more. Apparently, Chad wasn't just seeing Lena. The police have been looking for him in connection with similar schemes involving at least 3 other married women in the area. He's got a pattern of targeting lonely housewives, conducting affairs, getting them to support him financially, and then disappearing when things get complicated. I felt a mix of vindication and pity. Vindication because I'd been right about Chad from the beginning. Pity because Lena had been so desperate to feel desired that she'd fallen for the oldest con in the book. Is she cooperating with the police investigation? Reluctantly. She's embarrassed about the whole thing, but she wants her money back. The problem is that Chad is probably long gone, possibly out of state or even out of the country. So she's stuck with the debt. Unless she can prove fraud, yes. And fraud is difficult to prove in cases like this because she willingly gave him the money. After I hung up with Jennifer, I sat in my apartment thinking about the strange turns my life had taken over the past few months. The marriage I'd thought was solid had been built on lies. The woman I'd trusted completely had been living a double life. The man she'd chosen over me had been playing her from the beginning. But oddly, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. Free from the constant anxiety of wondering if my wife was telling me the truth. Free from the humiliation of being the last to know about my own life. Free from the exhausting work of trying to save a marriage that had been dead for months. That evening, I met Marty at O'Malley's for what had become our weekly check-in. He was already 3 beers in when I arrived, which meant he had news. So, he said without preamble, I heard from Danny Murphy that Lena's been asking around town about Chad. Apparently, she thinks someone here knows where he went. Any luck? Are you kidding? The guy was smart enough to disappear completely. Left no forwarding address. Closed all his local accounts, even abandoned his lease. Danny said the landlord is trying to track him down for 3 months of back rent. He wasn't paying his rent? Nope. Apparently he told the landlord that his business was having cash flow problems and he'd catch up soon. Then he vanished. I shook my head. Lena supported him for months and he was still stiffing his landlord? Gets better. Remember that BMW he was driving? Repo company picked it up last week. Turns out he'd been 3 months behind on the payments. So where was all of Lena's money going? White powder, gambling, other women. Danny heard he was running up tabs at high-end strip clubs in the city. Apparently, our boy Chad had expensive tastes. I took a long pull from my beer, processing this information. Lena hadn't just been betrayed by a con man. She'd been betrayed by a particularly stupid con man who'd blown her money on pills and dancers while telling her he loved her. You know what the really crazy part is? I said. What's that? If she'd just been honest with me from the beginning, if she'd told me she was unhappy and wanted a divorce, she could have walked away with half of everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. She would have been fine financially. Instead, she's got 30 grand in debt and no way to pay it off. Exactly. She traded a secure future for 8 months with a con man who never cared about her. Marty raised his beer. To poor decision-making skills. To consequences, I countered. We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the evening news on the bar's ancient television. Then Marty asked the question I'd been expecting. So what now? You going to start dating again? Eventually, maybe. I'm in no hurry. Good. Take your time, figure out what you want. But don't become one of those bitter divorced guys who never trusts anyone again. I don't think I'm bitter anymore. Honestly, I think I'm grateful. Grateful? If I hadn't found that key in the drain, I might have spent years married to someone who was lying to me. I might have grown old with someone who didn't respect me enough to be honest with me. At least now I know the truth and I can build something real with someone else. That's a healthy way to look at it. Besides, I added, Lena did me a favor in a weird way. She showed me exactly what I don't want in a relationship. She showed me how important honesty and loyalty really are. The next woman I get serious about will have to meet a much higher standard. Speaking of which, Marty said with a grin, there's this woman at my job site. Project manager, smart as heck. Divorced about 2 years ago. She's been asking about you. Marty, I'm just saying, when you're ready, there are good women out there. Women who won't lie to you or cheat on you or run up secret credit card bills to support their boyfriends. I smiled. When I'm ready, I'll let you know. But the truth was, I was starting to feel ready. Not for another marriage, not yet, but for the possibility of trusting someone again. For the possibility of building something honest and real with someone who valued those things as much as I did. 6 months after finding Chad's key in my shower drain, I was finally ready to start looking forward instead of backward, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked promising. 1 year later, I was installing new plumbing in my bathroom when I found myself staring at the shower drain. It was a different drain in a different house. I'd sold the old place and bought a smaller place across town, but the symbolism wasn't lost on me. A year ago, a plumber's discovery had destroyed my marriage and changed my life completely. Today, I was doing the plumbing work myself in my own house, on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, the project manager Marty had mentioned. We'd been dating for 4 months, taking things slow, building something solid based on honesty and mutual respect. She was coming over for dinner, and I was making my grandmother's lasagna recipe. Sarah was everything Lena hadn't been: direct, honest, independent, and completely uninterested in games or deception. When she was happy, she said so. When she was upset, she said so. When she wanted something, she asked for it. It was revolutionary after years of trying to decode Lena's moods and motivations. As I tightened the final connection on the drain, I thought about how much my life had changed. I was healthier, happier, and more financially secure than I'd been in years. I'd gotten a promotion at work, partly because I was no longer distracted by relationship drama. I'd started working out regularly, not to compete with anyone, but because I wanted to feel strong and confident. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. When something felt wrong, and I investigated instead of ignoring it. When someone's words didn't match their actions, I paid attention to the actions. When people showed me who they really were, I believed them. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Jennifer Walsh's number. "Nick, I thought you'd want to know. They found Chad Rourke." "Where?" "Las Vegas. He was arrested for running the same con on a casino executive's wife. Apparently, he'd been living there under a false name, but he got greedy and targeted the wrong woman." "What happens now?" "He's being extradited back here to face charges. Fraud, theft, identity theft, the works. The prosecutor thinks he can get him for at least 5 years, maybe more if the other victims come forward." "And Lena? She'll get some of her money back eventually, but most of it's gone. Chad spent it all on gambling and pills, just like we suspected." After I hung up, I felt a strange sense of closure. Chad Rourke was finally facing consequences for his actions. Lena was slowly rebuilding her life, working 2 jobs to pay off her debts, and living in a small apartment across town. We hadn't spoken since the divorce was finalized, and I was fine with that. Sarah arrived at 6:30 with a bottle of wine and a smile that still made my heart skip a beat. She kissed me hello, a real kiss, not the perfunctory peck I'd gotten used to with Lena, and asked about my plumbing project. "All fixed," I said. "No more mysterious objects in the drain." "Good. Though I have to say, that key was the luckiest thing that ever happened to you." She was right. Finding Chad's key had been devastating at the time, but it had also been liberating. It had forced me to confront the truth about my marriage and given me the courage to start over. As we sat down to dinner, Sarah told me about her day, her challenges at work, her plans for the weekend. She asked my opinion on things and actually listened to my answers. She made jokes and laughed at mine. She was present, engaged, honest. "I love you," she said suddenly in the middle of telling me about a difficult client. "I know we haven't said that yet, but I do. I love your integrity and your sense of humor and the way you make me feel safe and valued." "I love you too," I said, and meant it completely. "I love that you say what you mean and mean what you say. I love that I never have to wonder what you're thinking or worry about what you're hiding." "I'm not hiding anything," she said simply. "I don't see the point in hiding things from someone you love." Later that evening, as Sarah was getting ready for bed in my bathroom, she called out to me, "Nick, your drain is backing up a little. You might want to check it." For a split second, I felt a flash of the old anxiety. Then I remembered who I was with and why I trusted her completely. "Probably just hair," I called back. "I'll fix it tomorrow." And I would fix it. Whatever the problem was, I'd identify it, address it, and move on. Because that's what you do when you're building something real. You fix problems instead of ignoring them. You face truth instead of running from it. And you choose partners who do the same. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror and saw a man I recognized and respected. A man who'd been tested and had emerged stronger. A man who'd learned the difference between love and deception, between partnership and manipulation, between building something together and being used. The key in the drain had ended one chapter of my life and started another. In this new chapter, I was determined to write honestly, courageously, and with someone who valued truth as much as I did. Some endings are really beginnings. Some betrayals are really liberations, and sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. I turned off the lights and went to join the woman I loved, the woman who loved me back honestly and completely. Tomorrow, I'd fix whatever was wrong with the drain, but tonight, I was exactly where I belonged.